In Michigan, the dominant narrative holds that long prison sentences provide the severe, long-term punishment that felons deserve and protects the rest of us from them.
People who have committed acts of violence or other serious crime are cast into a category of other and considered fundamentally different from law-abiding citizens.
In 2020, Fresh Coast Alliance and Safe and Just Michigan set out to challenge this narrative.
Our From the Numbers project hopes to lift the voices of those impacted by the criminal justice system and change the narrative about people who have been incarcerated.
My name is Michael Duthler. I would like to speak with you today about the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu asserts that I find my humanity in yours, that it is in relationship that I become human. Now, if that is true, and I believe that it is, prison is often a place of anti-relationship. It is a place where people are defined by the very worst thing that they have done, and that precludes any hope for any meaningful relationship. Ubuntu says, no relationship, no humanity. I had an experience of this when working as a deaf interpreter. Allow me to qualify what I mean by deaf. If I were to write that in a sentence, I would use a capital D to denote a people with their own language, values, cultures, and life experiences that are entirely their own. It's with these people that I had the privilege of living 7 years of my 26 years in prisons with. When working as an interpreter, I sometimes had to help people with criminal sexual conduct cases. In prison, these are the people who are singularly, perhaps above all, defined by the worst mistake that they've made in their life. There's nothing but hardness and unforgiveness and bitterness and just anger held towards them. So I was told quite often, have nothing to do with them in any capacity whatsoever other than as an interpreter. Remember, Ubuntu says, no relationship, no humanity. I found that as we walked together and play games together and worship together, I was able to hear their stories. And I was able to understand and learn that they were very often people who were very wounded, who had done a very wounded thing. People who felt deep remorse and sorrow and desired wholeheartedly to change. When I realized that, when I understood that through relationship with them, I found that capacity for empathy, for compassion, to be in relationship with them. Ubuntu says that in that, I became more human. Another experience I had where there was anger and forgiveness and hardness and bitterness had to do with a corrections officer who had a reputation for being a drill sergeant whenever he caught you in any kind of wrong. I made the mistake one day of walking to the chow hall with a piece of mail in my pocket. And here he comes at me in full drill sergeant mode with great vigor and profanity. He's telling me how mail has the potential to be a vehicle for contraband, or perhaps even worse, a weapon. And how is he to know the difference? And how is he to know what my intentions were? I tell y'all, in that moment, this is what I was. I was all about anger and bitterness, and I defined him by that experience. I was hardened towards him. Ubuntu says, in severing that relationship, I also severed part of my humanity. And so I'm watching him, and I'm paying attention to him, and I noticed that though he was a drill sergeant, he was an extremely consistent drill sergeant. He didn't set people up. He didn't plant evidence. He simply made it his life mission that if you got out of line, he's going to bring you back in line. And he'd do it with that anger, with that vigor, when I recognized that he had some integrity to him. That created the room I needed to have empathy and compassion for him. Just an ounce. For a moment, I was able to think, to consider that perhaps he has a hard life out of prison that he was bringing into prison. Empathy and compassion didn't necessarily engender in me a desire to be in relationship, but it certainly was the antidote I needed to let go of my anger, my bitterness, my forgiveness, to regain that part of me that could have the capacity for relationship so that I could become human again. It bears repeating. At the heart of Ubuntu, and this certainly is not the totality of it, but at the heart of Ubuntu is this belief that I find my humanity in yours, that it is in relationship that I become human. How I wish the 19-year-old version of me had understood this. How I wish I'd placed my victim in relationship with other people. How I wish I would have thought of him as a son, as a brother, as an uncle, as a cousin, as a would-be father. How I wish I'd been in relationship with him so that perhaps that night his life would not have so needlessly ended. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention. I wish you well.
Mike, thanks for sharing with us today and your story. And again, I mean, hearing another story of a long-term prison sentence, served out 26 years, and making that transition back into society had to have been tough. What was one of the highlights or one of the greatest benefits that you received while in prison that really helped with your transition back out here?
I was tremendously blessed throughout my time in prison with friends and family support so that when I was able to come home, I had a pretty soft landing, I would say. I had the housing thing and clothes and appliances and a phone, and so I was truly grateful that for the material things, but I would say those interior things as well. So we're talking about relationship being key to, knowing our humanity. That was really important to me while I was inside prison, not only with my peers, but also with my family. And that was perhaps the best benefit, best blessing I had, because it kept me from becoming hard and kept me soft-hearted and allowed me now to be in relationship, not only in personal spheres, but professional spheres as well. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Amen.
When you shared about your humanity and relationship and how we find humanity in relationship, what today would you like folks to remember about your humanity?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. As it is with anyone, I guess is what I would want for me is to not be defined by the worst mistake I made in my life. And to understand that there is, for every one of us, that capacity for recognizing your error, recognizing your mistake, feeling tremendous sorrow, feeling tremendous sadness over what you've done. And I think that's very much part of being human, is that capacity to feel, to put yourself in the shoes of another, and to always relate to that other as a human being. I guess that's what I would want, or I would ask for myself as well, is to just be seen as a human being and not just simply as a murderer.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for sharing, Mike.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Rick.